Welcome to Through the Eyes of She, Equity in Health, Education, Business, and Leadership for the African Women in the 21st Century. Please utilize the chat on the bottom of your toolbar. This session is being recorded. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much and welcome back. I am honored to join the esteemed panel and moderators who have presented over the last day and a half. My name is Nicole Allen. I'm a Senior Program Director for the Yale Institute of Global Health, Operations Director for Applying Research for Healthy Liberia, and a lecturer at the Yale School of Public Health. In the next 55 minutes together, I'll briefly introduce the Yale Institute for Global Health, and then we'll have time to continue exploring the topic of women-led academic partnership with the panelists who previously presented this morning. And then we'll begin discussing what can come next and what are some of the solutions we can be part of. I want to thank the organizers for making this two-day event inclusive of leadership, business, and health, really interdisciplinary and cross-cutting. Madison, if you could go to the next slide. Oh, next slide. Thank you. One of the missions, the mission of the Yale Institute for Global Health is to bring together experts across Yale University, across disciplines, beyond the health sciences, but also incorporating law and divinity and architecture and drama to cultivate global connections outside the university. Next slide. Thank you, Madison. Our perspective of global health is very broad. We view global health as equity between and within countries and populations, leveraging multiple disciplines within and beyond health sciences, and bridging populations, population and individual level care, and emphasizing opportunities for transnational issues and solutions. Next slide. Great. So within the Yale Institute for Global Health, I want to highlight a few of the programs that we focus on and offer. One is our faculty support initiative that includes faculty networks and catalyzing funds for new partnerships and engagements. So here listed are a few of our established and emerging faculty networks. So the faculty members coalesce and form long-term collaborations around these academic areas, research partnerships, or geographic focuses. And then the funding awards are small and focused on new work for faculty and partners outside the university to develop and catalyze new activities within global health that incorporate that interdisciplinary focus of global health. Next slide, please. One of our other programs that we're really catalyzing right now is the Sustainable Health Initiative, which pulls in a business-minded approach to health solutions, innovating social health and environmental impact. We're bringing in external mentors and residents from investment, from entrepreneurship, and from innovation ecosystem cultivation. We're creating a community of entrepreneurs with a focus on global health in the United States and in other geographies across Africa and Southeast Asia. And then we've launched an accelerator program to support these startups in their early periods of growth. Next slide, please. Another program that we offer is focusing on future leaders within global health institutions. So we're providing fellowship placements for our students and trainees in high impact global institutions, such as ministries of health, multilateral organizations, and major NGOs. Here depicted are the fellows from the last year, as well as some of the organizations they were placed with. This program was heavily impacted by COVID. We envision a future program where these aren't digital or virtual fellowship placements, but that will have the opportunity to place them within the organizations in person. And we've also discussed a vision of pairing them with students and trainees from other countries as well, to build that equitable approach to the future of leadership training. And this program as well focuses on institutional ethics organizational psychology, and a real investment in understanding relationships necessary to tackle complex problems in global health. Next slide, please. Within the Global Health Ethics Program, there's a focus on research training opportunities for both research ethics and clinical ethics for students across the university. And next slide, please. The last program I'd like to mention is an ongoing series of conversations with leaders in all areas of health. Here are a couple highlighted that have taken place over the last year: a discussion of global health and climate impact with former Secretary of State John Kerry, and then of course Dr. Anthony Fauci speaking about COVID updates last fall. And then in our next session, we'll be talking about the US congressional response during the pandemic. So these are really an opportunity to engage the Yale community and our broader global network with thought leaders on different topics. So please stay connected to YIGH and follow up for more information about those conversations and different ways to engage. So I'll end there with my overview, very quick introduction of the Yale Institute for Global Health. I do encourage you to follow us on social media and check with our website as well. Pivoting back to our conversation and the conversation that's taken place over the last day, I've been personally inspired by the stories of individuals and the women in their lives about their work and careers and what they've overcome in order to accomplish. As we all invest in the future of gender equity in Africa and abroad, I've been reflecting on a quote by a warrior poet, Audre Lorde, and this is a quote from 1979. "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." I saw that quote over and over again to the point where I finally went out and read her book, and I'm inspired by this quote and many others. And this is really what we're discussing today, is how to innovate our approaches to change the systems that sustain the gender inequity we've been talking about. So I'd like to thank Drs. Tracy Raven and Harriet Nyanja-Kinza, and Drs. Sheila Shenoy, Christina Talbert-Slagle, and Dr. Bernice Dawn for the panels that they presented this morning, and for continuing to join this conversation here at noon, so we can learn more about your experiences and also help identify solutions to continue dismantling these systems in order to work towards gender equity, particularly in healthcare and academic global health. So we've heard this morning about two really strong women-led partnerships between US and African academic institutions. So I ask all of the panelists, anyone who would like to respond, how do you think the gender of the leaders and other team members have impacted these partnerships?
I can start. Okay, sure. Well, let me just say first, I'm so honored. I said this last time, but I want to say it again, to be in the room, as people are now saying in quotes, with so many amazing people, all of whom happen to be women. How terrific. And Dr. Harriet, I'm so glad to have met you and heard from you and your colleagues in Uganda. For me, I'm very honest about being junior, I try to be in what I think of as a followership role in these partnerships. And I have to say that for me, the gender piece of the work in Liberia has been just to be inspired by so many women who are senior to myself, who are so incredibly accomplished. Many of them are mothers. I'm a mother too. And it's just an honor. It's inspiring. And so, I just like to work for these amazing people who are women who are so inspiring and makes me feel like I can do great things next. So that's how I feel about working for Dr. Dawn. You know, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was the president of Liberia when we started to work there. How amazing. The history of Liberia, the end of the Civil War, had a role for women, powerful women who won a Nobel Peace Prize for their work. It's just inspiring, makes you, you know, it gives you people to look up to that you hope you can be like one day, for me.
Thank you, Christina. Dr. Mianja? And please feel free to keep yourself unmuted during this session so we can.
Good.
There we go.
In response to your question, I think women leaders tend to balance the boat. Male leaders look at output as the main issue. Have we done this? Has this been done? But women look at other issues beyond output. Women tend to look at social and other issues that affect other women. And once the men realize that there's someone who's willing to talk to people, even the men come to us. I've had a number of male students, male residents who come to with social problems. One was everybody came from an Ivy League school except me, and I feel like the old man out, and the man was depressed. Another one, I'm a resident, we are poor, the income is poor. My wife wants to leave because you're not bringing enough money in and we can't hardly handle issues. So once people realize that you listen to people, both men and women come. Whereas if people feel that the men don't listen to anybody, neither men or women will go to them with social and other issues. They only go to people who respond to them. So I think that's an important issue to consider.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For me, if we take our current project with Yale and Vanderbilt, there are 3 women, PI, co-PIs, and 1 male. I've worked with the other 2 females over some time. And what motivates me is the way we work to find solutions to the problems we have and the quality of the work we do. We work together. Normally we'll look at the problems, everybody thinking about solutions. There are times that people will write pieces, the other person will modify it, make it better. And that's how the implementation is also going. I guess because we are females, they also co-opted their students to help to do the work. And so they supervise students to do portions of the work. Our whole Camp Excel training that we mentioned on the previous panel was designed by students. Students from Yale, Vanderbilt, and AMWLT. They plan the implementation and they are the ones implementing there now. I think even though the 1 male that was there had been supportive, but he happened to be 1 person. And working together that way have actually kept us together thinking on solutions and long-term solutions that will solve problems. And I think I like that a lot. Thank you.
Well, you know, there's so much that has already been said that I can definitely not say any better. I think, you know, while it has certainly been such a privilege for me to have such phenomenal women role models as the panelists this morning, and also to have mentored and to continue to mentor women who are junior to me, I think something that I feel very fortunate for in my career is to have had the mentorship and sponsorship of men who were willing to see me as a whole person and to allow me to have my career develop as an authentic version of myself. For me to be able to say without shame to a group of trainees, you know what, I'm late for clinical rounds today because my daughter was sick and I had to figure out childcare, but now I'm here and now we can continue, to not have to make up some other excuse and hide that, I think that the response that I've gotten from trainees about those kinds of things, about sort of incorporating who I am into the work that I do, has been very positive, because I think in turn it allows them to feel comfortable being an authentic version of themselves, even as they seek to advance their careers.
One of the things in listening to the panels this morning that I was struck by is the humility that we often hear is beneficial in collaborative work, and especially in global health work, where we're higher income partners, academic partners are working in other countries outside of where they directly work or study. But that humility is really important. And in these partnerships, in the earlier panels, I feel like a lot of humility was also described. And I wonder if anyone wanted to comment further on the role of humility in establishing these partnerships.
Okay, thank you. Let me start. Well, I believe that governments like to be in charge. They like to see themselves as the ones in charge, even if they can't do it. And so if you come with a pre-designed project or activity and do not know how to position it and get their buy-in, it becomes challenging to implement, because the government often will not accept it. It's because it's foreign. So to be able to get their buy-in is to humble yourself. Your ideas might be the best, but it's to humble yourself and present it logically for them to see reason. It's like aligning them. And if you have to align people, it can be done with pride, and it has to be humble for them to buy in. Many times they themselves don't also see the weaknesses, or maybe often they will say national sovereignty, so it's still the pride. So they don't want to present as they are weak and you are stronger. But it's good to realize that and just put yourself in the position that you'll be able to help them. And they will see it as you are helping and not you belittling them. I think that's what it is. If they feel that way, they can throw it out easily. Thank you.
I think, to your question, Nicole, about the role of humility, I think personally, I don't see really any other way to enter into a partnership, because the only thing that I know for sure is myself, right? And I know what my institution has to offer to another institution, but there's no way that I can know what it is that a partner needs looking from the outside. There's no way that I can know their priorities within those needs, or what they are looking for from potential partners. And so, I think, to me, humility is just the strategy for approaching a relationship. So that's, I guess that's all that I would, fairly simple from my perspective.
I just wanted to say, I'm really glad that you brought this up, Nicole, and I was so glad to hear Christina and Dr. Don talk about this in their panel, the fact that the lead and the direction of their efforts is made based on the local team's experiences and their assessment of the situation, data driven, but really the overall direction of their efforts is driven by Dr. Dawn's team and leadership, and not the other way around, which unfortunately I think historically has been the case. And I'm so pleased to see that that's changing. I'm not sure in the research world, and that's starting to change as well. I'm not sure if it's going as well, that transition. But I think there's a lot of work to do to make sure that we are approaching these partnerships and collaborations with respect and humility, as you said. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Sheila. And oh, go ahead, Christina.
Well, I just wanted to pull out something that I think is interesting about the idea of humility, is that I don't think being humble is the same thing as being weak, but I think it can be seen that way. And I think you can be very strong, you can be very confident, you can be very determined and dedicated, and also be humble in a partnership and in a context. And I don't know if it's easier for women to do that or not. I think it might be, but I think that's an interesting piece of, maybe something we can all think more about. I'll think more about it, and whether it has an important piece in the fact that we're women-led partnerships. But I don't think being humble is the same thing as being weak at all. And yet I think it can often be seen that way.
And not only weak, but lacking in confidence. So Dr. Mianja, I believe we're also raising your hand to say something.
Looking at it from a low-income country with partners from a high-income country, I think humility from the high-income countries helps pave the way to being able to talk to each other. I mean, we sit here with a lot of limitations. The walls are not painted, the patients don't have enough drugs, and so on. And you wonder how that high-income country is going to perceive you. But if they accept you as you are and see the good in what you are doing, and stop putting too much emphasis on your weaknesses, it helps pave the way for an equal relationship. But if you get people who feel that we are not doing enough for our patients because we are not doing ABC, then you realize that the partnership becomes a bit complex. And that is one thing I've appreciated from people who have had long-term partnerships. They accept us as they are, and they see the good in what we are doing and capitalize on that, which is appreciated. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. And having, I've been fortunate enough to have a front row seat in watching Dr. Dawn and Dr. Talbert Slagle's partnership grow over the last several years. And I feel at many steps along the way, there have been conversations about that power imbalance that happens between Yale University and the University of Liberia, particularly now as often the funding is coming to Yale University for work in Liberia. And so I don't know, Christina and Dr. Dawn, if you wanted to comment on that further, but I have had the privilege of observing that those conversations and that intentionality in understanding the power and relationships that's just inherent in this partnership.
I think Dr. Dawn and I are looking at each other. Dr. Dawn, do you want to go first?
It's a big question. So
go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, that is a big question. Well, I can, I guess, say again what I said before, which is just, it would be, I would feel silly trying to come into a working relationship with someone of Dr. Dawn's experience and stature and training and do anything other than follow her direction. I would feel silly. And that kind of thing would never fly in the United States. So why would it fly in Liberia? Why would I ever even try that? But I am mindful that Yale has a brand, that Yale is an internationally known university, that my coming from Yale carries certain implications, that the fact that we put the grant through Yale as opposed to through the University of Liberia gives me some potential power, or maybe a lot of potential power, as the lead for Yale. And I'm always thinking, it's a struggle about how to make sure that I never, I grew up in Kentucky, and we would say, you don't want to get too big for your britches. I want to make sure I don't ever do that. And that it's always Dr. Dawn who says, this is how we're going to do things. And if I utilize the power that I have in the lead role for this grant, it's to make sure that things are done correctly on the Yale side, and to make sure that our team is always aligned with what our colleagues in Liberia want. And we do talk about that a lot. I feel like we do, Dr. Dawn. So I don't know, I'll pass it over to you for your reflections.
Yeah, for me, I know my weaknesses. And when I'm dealing with partners, I put my weaknesses on the table. And once I put it on the table, I expect it means that I'm looking up to you for help, because I consider you as the stronger person. I can recall from the beginning of this, the writing of the grant, the other partners asked us to be the prime. And I told them no. And I was saying that from experience, because if I had said yes, I don't believe we're going to get the grant. At that time, we had transitioned from one government to another. There was already letters circulating from ambassadors, how our government have misused some of their funds for other things, which the government admitted. So it was not even the right time to say University of Liberia will manage this grant. So I just told them we will work along. We just want things done. And they accepted. It is good to know your weakness and accept that it is your weakness instead of pretending. Sometimes some of these things pose challenges with junior colleagues when you are working with them, because they wouldn't understand why. But I've also have the way of explaining to them some of the strategies, because I think I've developed the skills over time and know when is the appropriate time to do certain things. So it's good to position yourself in a way that you'll be successful. You don't set up to fail. Mm-hmm. Yes, you don't set up to fail. And so I always approach things that way. And for me, it has worked very well. I even know that during the co-creation process, when we were designing a project, I discussed with Chelsea. Chelsea worked with me when I was minister. And then when I came on, I asked to the university, I asked Yale to bring her back to me. And she's been working with me. And then in one of the questions, the USAID team asked, so who will be the project manager? I've sat on so many panels, they don't ask for project manager. So I pick up right there, because we already have a history that is not pleasant already. And I'm sure I was reading their mind. They are also thinking what will happen. So I quickly told them Chelsea will manage the project. After that meeting, I met my team and told them Chelsea will manage the project for us. And I gave them reasons why, and they bought into that. So it's good to know when the time is okay and when the time is not okay, what is your weakness and what is your strength. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Dawn. And I noted that the weakness you described wasn't a personal weakness, but that of the situation and the context.
The situation and the context, yeah. And then the systems that also exist.
So with that, the next question I'd like to pose is, what are the barriers to women-led partnerships? Obviously, for each one of you on the panels this morning, and those who aren't present with us now, there's a long journey, your entire education and career and all those experiences and family that has contributed to that. But what are some of the other barriers that prevent women from taking leaderships in these types of partnerships and programs? I'm not asking light lunch questions today. I'm sorry.
For me, I really don't see anything that prevents women, if you have the skills, the knowledge to do the work, to provide the leadership to do the work. But often, because of societal issues, perceptions about women, we ourselves tend to put ourselves in positions where we think we should be subordinate to other people. That happens many times. So that's one issue. And then if you look in our context, women never really had the opportunity as it is unfolding now in the early days. And so to have women who are competent, who will be able to do the work, they are few. And often they are tied up into many other things. And so sometimes it becomes difficult to actually find a female leader who will provide the leadership to do that. Then, of course, we shouldn't forget that the males will not give us the chance, so the politics will be there. And normally, females don't like to be dragged into politics. People will say all kinds of things that normally is within the political setting, and women don't like those kind of things. So they prefer to let go than be into that. So those are some of the things. But honestly, like projects like this, that are clear cuts to implement, I don't really see serious barriers to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dawn. And I think that reflects back well on the program that you described in the last panel, which is focusing on making sure there are more women and girls in the pipeline for education and training. Dr. Mianja, I feel like you had raised your hand or started talking as well. Did you have something to add?
Barriers to women in leadership, the stories I've heard is fear of not succeeding, fear of not doing things right, and worry about too much work, getting advice that don't start putting more problems onto your lap. Administration is problematic. You are going to get into muddy waters. So some people listen to other voices that why don't you handle what you can chew? Why don't you handle what you can chew as opposed to handling problems? Why do you bring problems into your desk? And then there's another issue. In at least Uganda, if a woman is single and has no children, and she goes into leadership, there's going to be a lot of people talking about her. No wonder she couldn't get herself a man. No wonder she's doing this because she can't have children and so on. So now women feel more comfortable if there are family behind them and family is supportive. Whereas men don't have to worry about having family behind them or family being supportive. There are things that women tend to be sensitive. In a meeting, I couldn't say that. It didn't seem right. Men just throw out anything, even if it's outrageous. They don't feel worried about having said the wrong thing at the right time, but women want everything to be correct. So I think, and women need role models. They need someone to tell them, you can do it. Interesting enough, there's 3 people whom Tracy showed this morning. All of them, I played a role in telling them. I wrote to the dean and said, we have chosen you. I'm sure, yes. People want you, so you should stand for this. I mean, I won't go on and on, but you need to encourage them. You can be a leader. Oh, but it's too much. You can do it. If I did it, you can do it. So they need role models, and this fear of not succeeding and being sensitive about doing things wrong and taking on too much work.
And just to echo what Professor Harriet's saying, I mean, I think you can't overstate the importance of role models. I worked in public health globally before I went back to school to become a physician and then go on from there. And in the public health arena, my mentors, my role models were all men. However, they were men who did not have families. Maybe they were divorced, maybe they had sort of long-term partnerships, but they certainly didn't have families. And that's what I assumed, was that if I wanted a career in global health, then that's what that meant for me. And, many on the panel know my husband. And so I'm sure you can appreciate that when I met him, certainly he swept me off my feet, but it also caused some personal crisis about what does this mean for my future career if I'm now also going to be getting married and having a family. And so I think that I've sort of made it my mission when I mentor men and women who ask me about my career and ask about their own developing global health careers, to say, you don't need to tell me the details, but you do need to think about, what's happening with your parents in the long term. What do you want for your life outside of your career? How does that fit in with what you see? And be aware that it can change over time. There will be times when maybe you need to be more, staying in this place. There may be times when things will change, but you've got decades of a career ahead of you, and that can look like many different things over time. So I think saying those things, to me, I feel like it's my duty to sort of be somebody who's talking about those things in a different way.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Sheila, did you want to add to that?
I think just echoing what Tracy and Professor Harriet said and others, that we need to have much stronger messaging to young girls, not even at the point of medical school or residency or at that point, but even younger, that you can do this. You can be a doctor, you can be a public health scientist, you can be a leader. There's nothing that can stop you. I think a lot of people I've spoken with and people, including myself, have suffered at times from imposter syndrome, where we think that we're shocked that we are where we are, and how did I don't deserve to be here, and how could I possibly think about aspiring to that leadership role? And we need to give ourselves a check there and say, no, we can. And we need to pass that message on down to those younger than us and start early on and say, there's no room for thinking that you can't do this.
And I would just add one more thing on this question of role models that I really have enjoyed about my partnership with Dr. Don and others in Liberia, that you can find role models in other places besides your own place. And I think that's a really neat thing. I mean, there's Dr. Don, for whom I obviously have great respect, but there are so many amazing women in Liberia who are senior, and Dr. Marshall, Dr. Benson. I mean, I know you all don't know them. There are so many, Dr. McCauley, who are just amazing. And you can sit and ask them, how did you do this? How do you think about being a mother? How do you, just like the conversations that we're having today. I think that's one really wonderful thing about these kinds of partnerships, that you can find your role models, not necessarily, I mean, I have some here at Yale, I have some in the United States, I also have many in Liberia. And that's so important and so inspiring.
Thank you all for those comments. I really, I like this idea that keeps coming up about role models and that they can come from many different places. And then the other thing that Tracy mentioned explicitly is that being a whole person. So bringing in all of your identities And those can be really complex, but outside of just your professional identities or associations or affiliations, but being the mother, the daughter, the friend, and whatever other identities those might be, but being able to have that integrity in your work and in the roles that you play. With our last, we have just over 10 minutes left. It's flown by, and I'm really appreciating and enjoying the comments each of you are sharing. I would like us to think about more along the lines of role model, but what are some of the other solutions? What is the future of women-led partnerships like this? What is needed to cultivate more opportunities like this and support women leaders? And then we'll also turn to some questions in the chat after this. So if anyone would like to put questions in the chat, please do. And if you also have a response to that question, please also add it to the chat. So where do we go from here? How do we support and cultivate more women-led partnerships in global health academia?
I would say it's starting to build that confidence from when they are in high school, college, and then they get to the workplace. The way women are outspoken now, especially in our part of the world, it's not the same way it was with our mothers. And so things are changing gradually. And so if we educate women and they know how to position their own issues, there are things that are peculiar to women. And they know how to navigate the system to be able to move themselves forward, will make a lot of headways. Over the years, our classroom were more men than women. There were more boys than girls. The girls always took the back seat. Even us as mothers helped to create that because we were brought up that way. So if we continue to change that, like I said earlier, we designed the Camp Excel training for high school students to ensure that 50% of students who enter medical school coming in the following years will be females. And we work to support them and build that confidence. At the end of the day, I believe that they will be able to present their own issues. They'll be able to defend them. They'll be able to navigate them through the system. And you have more women voices on the table as compared to a few. So we'll be able to make a lot of headways that way. So that's one way that I think we can do it.
I think another important thing to think about is that we promote women, give them more spotlights, make sure they get more airtime, more billboards, more conference head spots, all of that to raise their profiles. But as we do all of this and we send the messaging to young girls as well, that they can pursue these aspirational goals of theirs. At the same time we do all of that, we also have to think about the messaging to men and the other genders, right? Promoting women does not diminish men and or any other gender. And making sure we're crafting that message appropriately will be to the benefit of everybody, right? I think it's not a weakness on men's part to recognize women on their path. So that's something just to put out there that we have to also think about in all of these efforts.
You know, another comment that I would make too, I think some also has to do with the selection side, sort of what are we looking for when we're doing admissions to medical schools or undergraduate institutions or what have you. I know there's been a lot of work at various institutions in the US thinking about, well, we need a diversity, people who are interested in a diversity of things in order to really develop the strongest workforce. To be somebody who is excellent in understanding literature and thinking about the humanities, those people can be phenomenal physicians, can be phenomenal leaders. Right. And some of those other fields, other disciplines that traditionally have not been selected for in science and academia, there are a lot of skills that are very much transferable. They just haven't been seen that way. And those other fields may be more likely to attract a greater balance of women than men for a variety of reasons. And so I think, some of this may have to do also with, what we as institutions are looking for. What are the kind of human beings that we are hoping to raise up to be our next leaders and our physicians and our scientists?
Thank you, Tracy. Harriet?
Another issue that I've noted that works is profile of people. If you see a young person, a medical student who is good, tell them that you're good. The problem with us in Africa, nobody ever tells people that you're good. It's always you're not doing this, you're not doing homework. There are always complaints. So if they are good, tell them you're good. Give them 5 minutes, talk to them and say, by the way, you're going places. You can be a bit really new. Yes, you're good. You're the group leader. You organize your group and so on. So tell people what you think about them. And the one-to-one has worked for me in many instances. People come back and 5 years ago, when I was a student, you told me that I had potential. Because of that, I became a director at my hospital. So talk to people, both men and women, and tell them. Our department, I think, had the highest number of lecturers in the college. And the reason is that whenever I saw anybody, a resident who was good, I'd call them and tell them, you have the potential to become a lecturer. You can become a professor. You can become a researcher. And years later, people come back and say, because you said that 7 years ago, things which you have sometimes forgotten, I decided to move into this direction. And this works for both men and women. Tell them what you think about them and encourage people when they're still young.
I'd like to echo that. It doesn't have to be a big commotion, but even the slightest words of encouragement, of affirmation. When I see something in the news from a colleague or a friend that they have achieved this, it could be a paper, it could be a new position, it could be anything. I try to send them a note and just say congratulations, and really try to show that I recognize that their effort. On the same note, though, when we see something that doesn't sit right, we also need to call those out. I think when we see our colleagues being diminished in a faculty meeting, or the young woman in the back room, afraid to speak up, or edged out of answering a question because the man next to her spoke more loudly. And I think we all have opportunities to call those out, in public or in private, to try to rectify those. And the more we call attention to those, the more we can facilitate some change.
Yeah, and I would just pick up on that and another point you made earlier, Sheila. I think it's also really important when there are men in male-dominated systems who are working to elevate women to reinforce that in whatever ways that we can. I mean, there have been a few comments made here about male mentors or male colleagues, certainly some that were impeding, but some that were really facilitating and supporting women's success. And I'm thinking of 2 men in my life. One is my PhD mentor, who said to me once, I had babies during my PhD. I had a baby, and then I had another one. So I had a toddler and a baby while I was working on my PhD. And I was really, I had to go pick up my kids from childcare. And I felt very self-conscious about that. And he once said to me, the mothers are the most efficient. It is okay. They're not standing around talking to each other. They eat while they're working. They plan their time. They are very efficient. It is okay. And I just cherish that. And the other man is my husband, who takes care of my children, or our children, when I'm traveling, and who, you know, thinks highly of me and wants to see me succeed. And I feel like we also need to elevate those men who are part of this conversation and present to make sure that we can accomplish everything we're capable of.
So a couple of those that I just want to highlight that I heard in all of your remarks is one, helping not only girls, but all genders unlearn the norms of gender inequality, encouraging everyone to try and sit up front, not just the boys. Going back to Dr. Don's story from medical school, and making sure that messaging for all genders is that of one of promoting everyone, not putting girls first, but allowing girls to also be prioritized, and then a continued focus on the pipeline, making sure that they're in the room so they can be at the table, and then focus on positive encouragement. And Dr. Mianja, something you said, we talk often about microaggressions that hold people back, those small things that happen throughout your career, your experience that slow you down. But just as important might be those micro encouragements to help push people forward and remind them that they're doing well, even if it's just a small thing. So the last question is coming from one of our participants, Crystal Green, and she asks, on the topic of pipeline, can you talk more about education? What skills, experience, and competencies would you like to see girls walking into medical school with? And what are some of the barriers, but what are the opportunities? If we can end there with what are the opportunities and what are the skills that you would like to see those girls entering into university or into medical school with?
Okay, thank you. The current curriculum that we are using for the science camp was built around the gaps that we see within our systems for both boys and girls. Critical thinking skills, writing skills, life skills, and then the whole sciences as a whole. How do you relate the science to other things? So basically it was designed that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Don. We just have a few minutes left. Would anyone like to share kind of closing thoughts or comments on our topic today, which is kind of the way forward, moving forward, women-led partnerships in global health academia? Tracy?
Yeah, well, first I wanted to say, I think Professor Harriet was going to make a comment on the last question. Harriet, did you?
Please, my apologies.
No problem. Respond to your last question. What I want to see girls coming to the medical school, they must be confident and not timid. And we can help them in this. Whereas organizing groups for clinical rotations, the groups are about 10 people. I always try to balance men and women. And when I go to students on my group, I'll tell them a girl's group alone is boring. A boys group alone is boring. It's more interesting when I have both boys and girls. And I like it when you compete against each other, showing them that we are equal and they can all do the same thing. So I think that's important. Confidence and not timidness.
And I would just add one other piece to that in terms of what I would like to see people entering educational spaces with, I think to me, one of the most important things is curiosity. I would like to have people arrive in undergraduate, in medical school with, not without having to have had internalized a sense that they shouldn't investigate something that they're interested in, that they need to do something because someone else told them to do it. I think curiosity is what drives you to become a physician who cares about who your patient is. It drives patient-centered care. It drives you to think about who your partners are going to be in academic partnerships. So I think that would be my one thing, is to make sure that we're not snuffing out someone's innate sense of curiosity along the academic pipeline before they get to this position.
Thank you very much. I am being told that we need to end here, but I just want to thank everyone again, the organizers for this opportunity, but also each of you for doing a panel and then staying on for this further discussion. So thank you very much. A brief announcement from the organizers. At this time, we're going to have a short 5-minute break. Please make sure to fill out the survey for this session, which can be found in the chat box, and we'll reconvene at 1 o'clock for the next panel. Thank you everyone who attended and participated, and thank you also to the participants in the conversation and the panelists.
Thank you.